Welcome back to the JumpifyLabs Podcast, the show for founders who want growth without the guesswork. Here we talk about the systems driving predictable growth, and today we're joined by Shira Abel, professional speaker, UC Berkeley lecturer, and 25-year tech marketer whose perception formula helps founders make enterprise buyers actually see their value and say yes faster. Shira, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
All right, let's kick things off. Talk a little bit about the work you're doing today and what experiences led you to doing it.
Well, okay, the experiences that led me to doing it came first, so I'll start with that. 25 years in marketing and sales, tech the whole time. I've been a founding mentor at Google Campus, founding mentor at Microsoft Ventures Accelerator. I was a volunteer with USAID, and I taught startups in Macedonia and Ukraine. Basically, helped developing regions around the world build their startup ecosystems. And every place I've gone, you've got different people who think different ways, look at things a different way. And so if you want them to listen to you, you have to understand how they think. And a lot of founders come into the United States from other places, and they need to understand how Americans think, how Americans buy, the differences in the business culture, the differences in the daily culture. Like, you could live in an area that's filled with people that come from the same place as you and be more comfortable. Okay, we tend to self-select. And that self-selection could be anything from socioeconomic status to race to orientation. It doesn't have to be, it's not necessarily somebody who looks like you to be like you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So all of these things come into it, and perception is what drives decisions. So if I want somebody on my team, if I want to work with them better, it helps if I understand how they think. If I'm going to have marketing and sales work together on an enterprise deal, marketing needs to understand sales' point of view, and sales needs to understand marketing's point of view. And all of them need to understand engineering, and engineering needs to have at least the slightest bit of understanding about marketing and sales, because you get silos in an organization. So that's where the perception formula came from. It was from all of those experiences in multiple organizations of all sizes in different countries doing different things over decades. It's a practitioner's framework.
Right. So you started helping international companies or countries outside of the US penetrate into the US market.
Yeah.
You've also spoken globally,
Yeah.
but in speaking with and working with people that are not American, what's one audience that surprised you the most in how they respond to your ideas?
Okay, this is going to be unexpected. I was a coach for the Silk Road Accelerator in Palo Alto. So these are people from the stands, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all the stands. And phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. It's such a lovely mix of collective, because it's a collective culture there, right? Everybody kind of works together for the good of the whole. But at the same time, there's an individualistic. I love the collectiveness of the culture, but also the way it plays out. It wasn't as hierarchical. Does that make sense? Collective cultures are normally very hierarchical, right? This didn't find this or them to be as hierarchical. They could take feedback and they listened to people no matter what their age was. And there was a kid in the program. He was 20 years old. But he was this whiz kid, and he was creating this product, and he's actually still in the States. And his product is doing well. And everybody was like, he's amazing. They didn't not listen to him because of his age. They didn't not listen to him because of, right? In a real hierarchical culture, because you get collective and hierarchical, they're not the same thing. If you want to know more about this, read Aaron Meyer's book, what's it called? The Culture Map. So these are not the same things. So you'll have, that was the group that surprised me the most. Basically, you're asking, I'm telling. That's the group that surprised me the most.
Yeah, so I'm thinking collective seems like it would draw out more ideas. It would draw more of the good stuff from people who have a variety of different experiences. They have a bunch of different thoughts, and they can collaborate a lot more efficiently, easier. This would be a really tough question for you to answer, but what do you feel like drives that collective type of environment? Because, I mean, I gave you extremes, but what do you think can be the catalyst to make a more collective place to work and just be part of?
Well, it's in the fundamentals that you put down as a culture when you first start. right? So you can have it where everybody has a voice and you make sure that everyone understands everyone has a voice. Hierarchical does not mean that the voices are silent. It means the voices have to go through a different way. Both of them work, and they can even work for innovation, but it means they have to work differently. And that's the thing about the perception formula, right? Because a lot of the times what we'll do is somebody will work differently than us and we'll think they're wrong rather than just thinking they're different. And how do they work and what's going on in their head, right? It could have nothing to do with you. I have a friend who shows up to absolutely everything late. Everything. She's never been on time to anything in her life. It drives me nuts, okay? Nuts. But I also know if she's coming over, we're starting without her, okay? Like, we're not waiting. And she understands we're starting without her. She's okay with it. She understands it. She thinks differently. She doesn't mean to be mean. I see it as an insult, but she doesn't, it's not intended that way, right? Which is how we're still friends. Because otherwise, why would you stay friends with somebody that drives you nuts like this? But she's a lovely person, and I understand she's not doing it on purpose. She comes from a culture where time is like, she does it everywhere, right? It's it's non-linear. Whereas I'm like, early's on time and on time is late, right? So culturally, where she comes from, it's totally acceptable and absolutely normal and weird to like not give somebody some grace before you show up to their house for something. So what do you do then? It's ingrained in the culture. Whereas I lived somewhere that if you didn't eat the food when it was hot on the table and you waited for everyone else, it was considered rude because you want to eat the food while it's hot and while it's the best. Otherwise, you're not enjoying the food, and you're meant to enjoy the food. So whereas in the States, you wait for everybody else to get their food. And if your food is cold by the time it shows up, oh, well, that's your problem. Mm-hmm. There are different cultures.
Yeah, and it's really great that there's so many different cultures as well, because a lot of people don't get exposed to it. And a lot of people live in their little bubbles without ever venturing. It's a sad thing, actually, if you think about it. They don't get exposed to any other ways that other people are living. And all they have is their own narrative. And then what I feel as well is once you step outside of that, you appreciate things that you do have, and then you see the ways that you can improve in so many areas.
That's an added benefit. Yeah. But
Huge.
Perception formula itself is really just about understanding, all right, I'm about to go into a company and the person that was there before me was absolutely beloved. How do I get this team to follow me when they're going to feel guilty? What am I walking into? What am I walking into? How do I manage this situation? We all get into situations regularly where we're like, I'm not totally sure what to do here. And you may not always have a mentor to ask. So there are ways to figure it out before you go in.
And let's talk a little bit about the perception formula, because you're writing it every day. You're adding a little more, getting it ready for public eyes. Why was it important for you to actually write?
Oh, because I've just made so many faux pas myself in my life, right? I mean, it always comes from the pain within. I don't know that any writer writes about something that they haven't necessarily, at least I wrote it myself, right? I tried to write it the first time with AI. It was terrible and I couldn't put my name on it. So I wrote it all myself. And you don't go through that much effort. It's a lot of effort, okay? And I'm not even done. I'm almost done with the first draft. Then there's the edit and the review. I mean, it's going to take a while before it actually gets published. So all this is going on. It's effort. You only do that if it's a pain that you have handled yourself, right? I'm not writing fiction. I'm writing a business book. So I have to understand the pain, and I understand the pain. And when I talk to audiences, so many other people in the audience also understand the pain. I spoke at the Project Management Institute in October, and we got into it about direct versus non-direct cultures. Oh my God. That was it. I also call it guess versus hint, or not direct. It's not direct. It's non-direct, and it's direct and indirect, and it's also known as hint versus tell, right? I'm somebody who tells you. You don't have to guess. I'm going to tell you exactly what I want when I'm thinking and all of this. But there are other cultures where that's rude. Usually a lot has to do with socioeconomic status. I didn't grow up with money. So when you've got all of these other things that you're managing, usually blunt goes with it. Not always, but often. And with this higher socioeconomic status, you signal what you're trying to say. as opposed to saying it, because saying it outright would be considered rude or uncouth. So if you get a manager from one area who's never really handled the other, or never worked with somebody, or has lived in a bubble and has never worked with somebody who's direct, the direct person sees the non-direct person as passive aggressive, as hinting, and they don't get it, and they see it as mean. And the indirect person sees the other one as rude, and you get clashes. And this could be two people who lived in the same city their entire lives, but on different sides of the track.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
definitely.
a great discussion. Oh my God, the entire audience got into it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, I wish I was there for it. Okay, so the perception formula. How can you?
What are the elements of perception?
What are What are
Okay.
it? I'm thinking like an actual equation, and I'm Asian, but I'm terrible at math. I hear formula, and I also see, okay, there's got to be like a equal sign, a plus sign somewhere
There
in
is
there.
actually.
Yeah.
So its perception is equal to the function of hormones, heuristics, history, and heritage. What are those? Hormones. There are 6 hormones that I've learned in marketing and sales that can be managed from the outside. Okay. And they are cortisol, norepinephrine, endorphins, serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine. Okay. And these, cortisol is stress, endorphins is running, oxytocin is trust. So they all kind of bring out different emotions. Okay. So that's one bit of it. Heuristics are mental shortcuts. And usually when I'm giving a talk, I have everybody in the audience say heuristics several times during the talk so that they remember the word, because it's an important word. Heuristics are all of our mental shortcuts. We've got 2 systems of thinking, system 1 and system 2. And system 1 is all the fast things that we just know. If I'm going to the grocery store and I need to buy ketchup, I'm buying Heinz. My brain's not doing any processing unless I'm in Europe and there's no Heinz. And then I have to figure out which one I'm going to get. But my son isn't 6 years old anymore, so it's not a stress. But when he was 6 and we were in Europe and I needed to buy ketchup and there was no Heinz, you're going to spend 10 minutes there going, oh God, I want my child to eat and my child puts ketchup on everything. What am I going to do? So then you spend the time, right viscosity, right color, what is it? So that's heuristics. It's your mental shortcuts. You know to stop at a red light. You know all of these things automatically. System 2 is deep thinking. I really have to ponder this. I really have to think about this. This is a situation. I need to figure out how this person thinks. Deep thinking. So that's heuristics. History is the history that they have with you or your brand, because usually we're thinking about this, about how the other side thinks, right? We're figuring out it's either we're figuring out the target market, or we're figuring out somebody in a sale, or we're figuring out how this office works, or we're figuring out an individual. But we need to figure out what the history is here. What am I walking into as a manager? What am I coming into a team? I'm getting bought by another company. What's that company going to be like? What happened before I showed up? So these are all the things that happened before. What's the history, right? That's pretty basic. And then heritage is all the complex things that go on for us. Are we direct, indirect? Are we collective, individualistic? And then on top of all of that, how do we think about time? I mean, there's all these different elements to it. So all of that's mapped out in the book. And that is, when you put all of that together, you can understand how they perceive things. When you understand how they perceive things, you can figure out how to align the perception that they have with what you want. Okay. So a great example of this, have you watched The Pit?
The Pit? No.
Okay. It's a show with Noah Wiley. He's a doctor. They're in the ER. It's great. Anyway, in The Pit, there's this episode where 2 doctors that are super smart, and they're kind of going up against each other, and they're trying to one up each other on how smart they are. They're 2 interns. They're not actual doctors yet. And they want to be taken by the hospital. So Noah's in the room. He's the head of the ER. He's in the room and he says, one of the things we really value in our doctors is teamwork. And immediately they change. Instead of competing with each other, they start collaborating, because they need to be in alignment with what they want. So their behavior changed because he understood how they perceived, right? So he was able to drive their decisions differently, because perception drives decisions. And you need to be in alignment with how you perceive things. So if you understand how the other side perceives things, you can frame things in a way that taking your product or working with you or doing things with you is in alignment with them.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Once you're starting to realize what's important to the other person, then you can tailor how you're having conversations. So actually the things you say actually land.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. If you're not getting through, well, if you're not getting through, it's either they're too stressed to hear you, and then you need to lower the cortisol. You need to lower the stress, calm things down. If you're coming into an office that just went through a bunch of layoffs and you're the new person and you're leading the team that just had layoffs, don't make major changes in the very beginning. Give them a minute to breathe. Give them a minute to feel like they're safe. Over communicate so that they feel like they're safe. And then you could start to slowly make changes. But doing it immediately is just nobody's hearing you.
Yeah. So the challenge I'm thinking as well is I would love to be able to understand someone's perception so that I can communicate more effectively. The communication can be more fluid both ways, but how do you start to understand their perception? Because you live in your body, you see the world through your lens. How do we start doing that to see how they're seeing the world?
One is getting to know the person as an individual, right? So maybe you say, all right, these meetings, we come in, we get the work done, and that's it. These meetings, we're starting off with 15 minutes of small talk, and then we start the meeting, right? Maybe your once a week meeting has 15 minutes of small talk where you get to know others on the team. And then you do maybe a group dinner once a month. Going to dinner gets you to a different level of conversation, or going to eat together brings a different level of conversation than you get from just being in an office with someone, right? So getting to know them more as a person, and then you find out where they're from, how they grew up. These are things that happen naturally over time. And if you don't find out anything about them, if somebody's that close, there's a reason for it. And you could start figuring that out as well. So it takes time, usually, but let's say you're going into a new office. Well, if you're going into a new office, usually one of the first things I do is interview everyone. Where do you come from? What do you do? Because you don't want to step on anybody's toes. You want to understand how the office works. What do I need to know? What, who feels what about what? And you get all the information. So that's one of the first things you do when you go into an office. You do that with everyone and you get a lay of the land. So that's one way you could do it. If you're doing it for a sale, you may not get that level of access, but you're working to figure out, all right, who's going to be my champion? Who's the challenger? There are a million different sales books about these things. You can use those methods to go about it. You can, but again, it's a matter of getting to know the individuals. And I do have in the book an entire chapter on using AI for this. So that is going to be a part of it, because the nice thing about AI is it knows it's already been trained on all the behavioral economists' work and most psychology work. So it's got all of that already in there. The issues are hallucinations and things like this, and you not putting in enough, or the person, us, not putting in enough information to get a good result. Because like with everything else on AI, prompt result. That's going to be a part of it. And that was part of the reason why I felt I could do the book now, because it was too complex and it wasn't something that somebody could actually use without reading all the other books that I've read. I mean, look at my bookshelf. Okay. Yeah. Like, who's going to read Thinking Fast and Slow? Really? I mean, like, not a lot of people are going to read it collectively over all of the people that there are in the world. You need to take this stuff and put it into a way that somebody who isn't going to read those books can still learn it, I think, which is why I wrote it.
Yeah, I've tried to read that book a few times. And
it's a slog. Yeah. I listened to it is what I did.
I've also heard from so many people like how good of a book it is. I just, when it's something's like overly complex, you just kind of tune out.
They wrote it like that on purpose.
Okay. So it was the intention to like really truck through it.
It's meant for academics. It's not meant for laymen. And actually, in Misbehaving, he explains, and Misbehaving is not written by Kahneman. Misbehaving, Taylor, I don't know how to say his last name, Taller, somebody will, I'm sure, write in and massacre me for this. But, he wrote about how these books were specifically written for academics, and they were written to be hard to read on purpose.
Why?
Because they were meant for academics. They weren't considered serious if they weren't hard to read.
Oh, okay. Right.
So if it's not fun for you, it's not meant to be fun for you. And that's why so many people aren't going to read the books, because most of these books were written by academics for academics. And, it's like, do you want to sit and read a textbook? I don't. So I'm giving something else.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Hopefully you're not writing at college level. I know you're
No.
Berkeley, tone it down a little bit so that more people can actually receive your gift, right? Because if you put up that barrier of making comprehension so difficult, then you kind of gatekeep it from everyone else that can actually benefit from it.
100%. No, I always make sure, no matter who I come from the world of copywriting. Okay, I started in copy. So I've been writing a very long time, and I have a very strong opinion about making sure that anything that you write, whether it's sales material, marketing, whatever, and I've worked in deep tech. Most of the things I've done over the years is deep tech selling to engineers. Even still, it needs to be written, unless you're writing the most technical material for the engineers themselves, everything else has to be written at an 8th grade reading level.
Yeah.
Or else you are making yourself sound smarter doesn't do you any favors, and half the time it's unnecessary and ends up making you sound stupid.
I'm excited for your launch. Shira, I know that your book is still in the works right now. It's under construction, but if anybody wanted to get a glimpse inside of your way of thinking, where can they go?
There's so many places. My Substack, okay? The Perception Playbook is on Substack. And I am on YouTube, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram. You could choose any one of those places. They're the same videos, so choose the platform that you prefer. I'm on LinkedIn. And of course, I've got my website. So loads of different places. My blogs are on both Hunter and Bard and ShiraAbel.com. If you're interested in the marketing stuff, go to Hunter and Bard. If you're interested in the perception work that's not marketing related, go to ShiraAbel.com. There are so many ways to find me.
All right. So if you're listening to this and you're interested in finding more about the perception formula, be sure to check out Shira's resources. Again, she's on all social media channels. She's also on LinkedIn. And then her website, ShiraAbel.com. So Shira, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us, for giving us a bit of a sample into the perception formula, which I'm really excited to learn more about, actually.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you for coming on. And if you're listening and you like hearing from Shira, be sure to check her out. But if you want to hear more stories like this from other leaders pushing the envelope for growth, be sure to tune into the JumpifyLabs podcast for more. My name is Jay. Thanks so much. Take care.